In the winter of 1942, American soldiers learned their first and harshest lesson of the war on the rocky slopes of the Kasserine Pass. Many of them had never seen combat before. They were young, confident, and convinced that the war would be won through sheer numbers and equipment. But the German Afrika Korps, led by Erwin Rommel, taught them a different reality. The Americans were pushed back nearly 20 miles in 2 days. Units became separated, communications failed, and several positions collapsed under coordinated German armor attacks. Yet something remarkable happened. Instead of pretending the defeat hadn't happened, American commanders documented every mistake. Officers interviewed surviving soldiers, studied German tactics, and rewrote their own procedures. Within weeks, formations were reorganized, supply lines strengthened, and new anti-tank tactics were introduced. What had been a disaster slowly turned into the foundation of a stronger army. Another painful lesson came even earlier in the Philippines, when American and Filipino forces were overwhelmed by Japan in 1941. The fall of Bataan and Corregidor revealed the danger of outdated training and poor preparation for jungle warfare. But again, the response was swift. The U.S. Marines rewrote their Pacific manuals, trained new units in jungle survival, and redesigned equipment to withstand heat, humidity, and close-range combat. By 1943, these changes were already visible. In North Africa, the same troops who had retreated at Kasserine launched coordinated attacks with improved armor support and far stronger discipline. Veterans later said that the defeat had forced them to grow up overnight. America's early failures were painful, humiliating, and costly, but each one became a turning point. Each setback created a lesson, and each lesson forged an army that adapted faster than any other force in the war. When American troops entered World War II, their technology was far from perfect. But unlike many armies, the United States learned quickly how to upgrade equipment while fighting. The transformation was so rapid that soldiers who landed in North Africa in 1942 barely recognized the gear they carried into France in 1944. One of the most important innovations was the SCR-300 radio. Early in the war, American units often lost contact during German attacks, especially at Kasserine Pass. Orders took too long to reach frontline platoons, and confusion spread faster than enemy fire. The SCR-300 changed everything. Lightweight, portable, and reliable, it gave squad leaders immediate communication with commanders. Veterans later said the radio shortened the battlefield, turning scattered companies into a coordinated force. Another breakthrough came with the M1 Garand. While many Allied soldiers still used bolt-action rifles requiring manual cycling after each shot, U.S. infantry carried a semi-automatic weapon capable of firing 8 rounds rapidly. The firepower advantage became clear in the hedgerows of Normandy, where American units often overcame German positions simply by overwhelming them with sustained rifle fire. Armor evolved just as quickly. Early Shermans struggled against German Tigers, but American engineers continuously modified them, improving engines, armor layouts, and introducing better ammunition. By late 1944, upgraded Shermans fighting in teams with tank destroyers could finally challenge German heavy armor. Mobility, speed, and coordinated fire allowed U.S. forces to outmaneuver enemies who relied heavily on a few powerful but slow machines. Even small innovations had massive effects. Flamethrowers helped Marines clear fortified bunkers in the Pacific. The Higgins boat allowed rapid amphibious landings that shaped battles from Normandy to Tarawa, and improved radar systems guided night operations and protected fleets during surprise attacks. America didn't start the war with the best technology, but it mastered the art of rapid innovation, fixing problems, adapting designs, and pushing new equipment into combat faster than any other army. This constant evolution turned the battlefield into a place where U.S. forces always tried to stay one step ahead. The U.S. Army entered World War II led by commanders who understood a hard truth. Tradition didn't win modern wars. Adaptation did. Many officers had learned this lesson during the interwar years, watching how fast technology reshaped combat. When the fighting began, These leaders pushed their troops to think flexibly, experiment, and change tactics on the move. One of the most influential figures was General George C. Marshall, the chief of staff who rebuilt the entire U.S. Army. Marshall insisted that officers at every level be capable of independent thinking, not just following orders blindly. He removed hundreds of senior leaders who clung to outdated doctrine and replaced them with younger, more dynamic commanders. To Marshall, the Army needed minds that adjusted faster than the enemy. This mindset carried into the field under leaders like General Dwight Eisenhower. During the North African campaign, Eisenhower watched early American failures and immediately demanded tactical changes: better coordination between infantry and armor, more flexible supply lines, and aggressive local decision-making. He trusted subordinates to make battlefield calls without waiting for permission, something rare in many other Allied armies. In the Pacific, General Howland "Mad" Smith encouraged Marines to constantly adapt during island campaigns. He ordered rapid changes in assault tactics after the heavy losses at Tarawa, pushing for improved bombardment strategies and better communication between landing units. His adjustments saved thousands of lives in later operations. Even at lower levels, commanders shaped the culture of adaptation. Junior officers returning from battles were encouraged to share lessons directly with training centers in the United States. Within weeks, new tactics developed in Tunisia or Guadalcanal were being taught to fresh recruits preparing for Europe or the Pacific. No other Allied nation had a feedback system this fast. These leaders created an environment where questioning old methods wasn't insubordination, it was survival. They rewarded initiative and punished stagnation. By 1944, American units no longer resembled the inexperienced forces from early North Africa. They had become a flexible, fast-moving army able to adjust tactics in hours, not months. The commanders who encouraged adaptation shaped not only their troops, but the entire trajectory of the war. Their willingness to change became one of America's greatest weapons. American soldiers of World War II didn't become effective simply because they were brave. They were trained to think, adapt, and solve problems faster than the enemy. When the U.S. entered the war in 1941, the Army understood that inexperienced troops would be forced into complex battles almost immediately. Traditional drill-based training wasn't enough. Soldiers needed to learn how to make decisions under pressure. Training camps across the United States transformed into massive laboratories for realism. In Louisiana, the famous 1941 War Games pushed more than 400,000 troops into mock battles that stretched across forests, swamps, and small towns. Commanders encouraged units to improvise solutions instead of waiting for orders. Mistakes weren't punished, they were studied. The goal was simple: create soldiers who could outthink the enemy, not just outshoot him. Live-fire exercises also became a core part of preparation. Recruits learned to move under gunfire, take cover instinctively, and coordinate with tanks and artillery. These drills were designed after observing early German successes in Europe. If the Wehrmacht fought aggressively and unpredictably, American troops needed to be even more flexible. One of the biggest innovations was the emphasis on after-action review. When a platoon finished an exercise, instructors asked soldiers what worked, what failed, and what they would change. This style of reflective learning made troops mentally quicker and more confident. Instead of blindly repeating routines, they understood why they were doing them. Training centers also absorbed lessons from real battlefields. Reports from Guadalcanal, North Africa, and Sicily were turned into new teaching materials within weeks. If Japanese soldiers used nighttime infiltration, American recruits practiced nighttime defense. If German tanks exploited gaps in lines, U.S. infantry learned how to seal those gaps on instinct. No other Allied nation updated training this rapidly. By the time these soldiers reached Europe or the Pacific, they were not rigid formations waiting for officers to think for them. They were fighters who recognized patterns, adapted to terrain, and reacted fast. This mindset often made the difference in small unit battles where hesitation meant death. The American Army didn't just train soldiers, it trained thinking soldiers. That ability to learn fast became one of the decisive advantages of the United States in World War II. One of the greatest strengths of the American military in World War II wasn't a weapon, a vehicle, or even a commander. It was a system. A system built on brutally honest feedback. After every battle, every skirmish, and every mistake, the U.S. Army asked a single question: what can we do better next time? This mindset emerged early in the war, when American units entering combat in North Africa struggled against German veterans. Instead of hiding those failures, commanders documented everything: communication breakdowns, tactics that didn't work, equipment flaws, even soldiers' psychological reactions. These reports were rushed back to training centers in the U.S., where they were turned into updated manuals, new drills, and redesigned equipment. Lessons learned in Tunisia shaped how troops fought in Normandy. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Marines at Guadalcanal sent back urgent notes about Japanese nighttime attacks, sniper tactics, and ambush strategies. Within weeks, new training programs were teaching recruits how to fight in darkness, react to sudden assaults, and navigate dense jungle. No other Allied force adapted its training this quickly. But the feedback loop didn't stop with training, it shaped the battlefield itself. After-action reports were required for every engagement, big or small. Platoon leaders recorded what they saw, what surprised them, and what nearly got them killed. Commanders read these reports carefully, looking for patterns. If several squads noted the same weakness, it became a priority for change. The Army also had dedicated lessons learned teams, groups of officers who traveled between units collecting insights. They interviewed soldiers on the front lines, inspecting terrain, positions, and captured enemy equipment. Their findings influenced everything from infantry formations to tank tactics. Even weapons benefited from this approach. The early M4 Sherman struggled against German armor, and reports poured in. Instead of ignoring them, engineers made incremental improvements: better ammunition, better communication between tank crews and infantry, better coordination with air support. By late 1944, those changes helped transform the armored force into a far more lethal opponent. This continuous cycle of battle, reflection, and improvement gave American forces something priceless: momentum. Each mistake was corrected before the next fight. Each success was studied and repeated. Each soldier became smarter, not just tougher. While other armies clung to rigid traditions, the U.S. military relied on something far more powerful: evolution. And in a global war where conditions changed constantly, adaptation was the key to victory.